Tá filmando?
We're just filming.
Yeah, now we started.
Yeah.
Eu tô aqui com o Hugh Johnson, uma honra estar com ele na casa dele para falar um pouquinho de vinho. Hugh, thank you very much to talk to me.
My pleasure.
And to start, an inevitable question. How did you start with wine? When and why?
I started with wine when I was a student at Cambridge University. And I just met a lot of friends who loved wine and we tasted wine together. And then I became a journalist.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I just wanted to be paid to write. As a young man, as you know very well, it's hard to write and be paid for it. So I got a job with Condé Nast, publishers of Vogue, and I managed to get a wine article into Vogue. This is a long time ago. It was 1960.
1960.
Yeah.
The world of wine was changing.
Well, the world of wine had hardly started in modern terms. It just wasn't a popular subject at all. But I thought, well, it's something that people, intelligent people with the means would be interested in. Anyway, I started trying to be entertaining about wine, which I think we all ought to be. I mean, there's no good being boring about it. You must be entertaining or you won't get readers. It went very well. I then started writing about wine for our Sunday Times newspaper, and then I really wanted to write a book about it, and so my career in wine developed entirely through writing. I never had any qualifications. My first book was just called Wine, and it was published in 1966, and it went very well. But then I was basically in the magazine, a newspaper trade. I edited a fashion magazine called Queen. I was a travel editor of the Sunday Times. I did many things like that. And then I had the opportunity of writing a wine atlas. My publisher said, "Do you think there's any relationship between maps and wine?" I said, "Any relationship? You must be kidding." If you could have a really good map.
Maybe if you bring the microphone here.
If you could have a really good map of the wines of the world, people would suddenly get the whole thing in focus and realise why Bordeaux and Burgundy are as different as they are, and wouldn't have to memorise long lists of names because they could see.
Yes, wine is a lot of things, but it's also very much geography.
Very, very much geography. Anyway, that book was published, and that was a huge success, and that's how it started.
Did you have wine in your personal life and family when you were younger?
Oh, yes.
Do you possibly remember the first wine you had?
Possibly. I mean, my father was a barrister. He was in law, and he used to drink wine, but not in the way that people do now. He just regularly had good Bordeaux, and the wine he always bought was Chateau Les Hommes de Pez.
So we were very well educated in wine.
No, yes, I mean, generally you would say that the upper classes in this country did know a certain amount about wine, and nobody else cared. That was the way it was.
And do you think your taste changed a lot through the years?
Well, it has far more opportunities to taste more different things. I mean, it was a very limited range of wines 60 years ago in this country.
Yes. Everywhere.
Everywhere, indeed. But I'm rather conservative. That is to say that what I originally loved, I still do love, and I'm very happy to take alternatives to that and explore the world outside the range that I've always known.
Well, to us in Brazil, it's hard to say that because I started drinking table wine, non-vinifera wines, and then discovering the old world wines.
Yeah.
So my taste had changed a lot through the years.
Yeah.
And something that you have, like very few people in the world, perspective of the wine world in the last decades. And when you look back to the last 40 years, what do you see?
I see unbelievable progress. I mean, just astounding technical capabilities, understanding of what quality what quality is, opportunities for planting good vines in places that nobody ever imagined. I mean, when I started in wine, New Zealand had no wine industry at all.
Yeah.
And but I always wanted to get to the latest thing. I think I wrote the first book about Chilean wine in English.
When was it?
Oh God, when was it? About in the early 1970s.
1970s. About Chile.
Yeah.
It's
Oh yes.
very early.
I imported wine from Chile in barrels. I remember I had a barrel of 1968 Cabernet Sauvignon from who was it from? Can't remember the grower now. 68 was a very good vintage in Chile.
I was a little child.
And I was, I was one of the first people to go to Australia and to explore the new wine. It was mainly in the end of the 60s, beginning of the 70s. And of course, California was developing then. But people now wouldn't believe how little interesting wine was made. A few people in Australia, California were making very, very good wine, but they were selling it for nothing. There was no market. In California, there was a guy called Joe Heights in the Napa Valley who caused an absolute sensation by demanding $10 a bottle for his best wine. And they said, but you can't do that, wine isn't worth $10 a bottle. Everyone else had been getting 2 or 3.
Yeah, so now they're selling for 200.
Too much, far too much.
With your perspective from the past, what do you see when you look for the future?
I see a much brighter prospect than I did, say, 15 years ago or 20 years ago. Because at that time, the world's wine taste was rather, let's say, undeveloped, unsophisticated. And it was largely, a lot of it on the American side was being led by Robert Parker, who I respect but I don't agree with. And everybody wanted bigger and bigger and bigger wines. They thought the quality consisted of strength, color, thickness.
We're still in this stage in Brazil.
Yeah, well,
we are getting over it little by little.
It takes a little while to get over it. And I sometimes felt like a one-man crusade, saying wine doesn't have to be like that. And what is the point of making wine which almost stops you drinking it? You know, one glass, and you think that's enough, thank you. Because it must be in the winemaker's interest to make a wine you want to go on drinking, not stop after one glass.
Have a second glass, maybe a second bottle. Yes.
Yeah.
And what kind of advice could you give to a young drinker? For example, someone in Brazil that is starting to discover the wine.
I've always answered in a similar way to that question, which is that the interesting thing about wine is its variety. You wouldn't think twice about it if it tasted the same every time you had a bottle. And that is different from beer, really.
Yes, very much.
So I say, start comparing wines. Don't order 1 glass of wine, order 2 glasses of wine. Compare them. Then you've begun wine tasting, with no formality at all. And then better, do it with friends. And get your friends each to order a different bottle or a different glass of wine, compare them, talk about them, decide whether you all agree on one wine being better than the others, or you each have a separate view. And once you've started doing that, it's entertaining, it's good conversation, and you'll find, you'll discover much more doing that than just tasting wine on your own.
Totally agree. And what kind of advice could you give to a young wine writer? I'm not that young, but for me, for example.
Well, it's quite difficult you've succeeded in the magazine world, but to a young wine writer who isn't being published, it's very, very difficult. I mean, you have to be a good writer for a start. Just knowing about wine is not enough. The words matter more than the wine.
Yes.
If you can master the words, then people will follow you.
Great advice. One of the greatest things I read from you is that there's no wines but bottles. Each
Yeah.
bottle is a single history. And
Yeah.
which are your unforgettable bottles?
I keep a lot of empty bottles in my study at
Ah.
home. And each one has memories of a different kind, because sometimes the bottle is unforgettable because it was just fabulously good and memorable in every way. Otherwise, I keep the bottles because I drank them with lovely people on a happy occasion and a lovely place. The pleasures of wine are much more complex than just
It's
taste
not
and
just a
smell.
liquid, it's the occasion, of course.
Yeah.
And can you mention one or two of those wines?
I could go on all day. Well, thinking about California, the Napa Valley, I mean, I've got an empty bottle of a Beaulieu BV Vineyards, Georges Latour Cabernet Sauvignon, 1966, I think it is, which I drank with the man who made it, who was this wonderful old Russian gentleman called Andrei Chelystev, who was the first man really to reintroduce high quality into California after Prohibition. Meeting him was quite extraordinary. I mean, here was a man he'd survived the Russian Revolution, he'd gone to France, he'd taught himself about wine, he'd gone to California, and he was ready to teach the New World